We need the governor to call for a special session now so that we can redistrict now so that we can make sure that Georgians are represented like they should. The Supreme Court made the right decision, and they made sure that intentional racial discrimination is not being done. During the last redistricting, it was racial discrimination. Now we know that, and now we need to correct it.
That's Congressman Buddy Carter yesterday on the Fox Report, calling for the Peach State to redraw its congressional maps immediately after last week's Supreme Court ruling that outlawed gerrymandering based on race. A handful of southern states are now urging their legislatures to redistrict ahead of the 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential race. Let's bring in former federal military prosecutor Katie Cherkasky, now a criminal defense attorney. Katie, you heard Buddy Carter say, let's redistrict now, but the governor there in Georgia says, hey, voting has already begun in our primary elections. We can't undo everything right now. What do you think?
Well, it is difficult when we're talking about changing the districts right before an election, but because the Supreme Court's decision is very permissible to redistricting, and it essentially puts off the table lawsuits in many respects, then I think that you're going to see a lot of states pushing very hard on both sides to redistrict, because they now know that the Supreme Court is probably not going to undo most of that unless there's a very specific circumstance where there's what seems to be intentional racial discrimination, which is the new interpretation, the clarified interpretation that this case came out with.
Texas started some redistricting earlier in the year, which caused other states to follow suit. Here's the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, on all of this. Listen.
The Supreme Court just applied a principle that most Americans already understood, and that is, for example, in a hiring decision in the United States, everybody knows an employer cannot engage in racial discrimination.
So the governor is saying that you can't discriminate when it comes to voting either. That's what the Supreme Court has said. Does this give rise for, more states, especially southern states, to do a lot more redistricting?
Well, absolutely it does, because what we have to understand is that the use of race in any laws is very disfavored, and there can only be that use in specific circumstances. And the Supreme Court essentially said that when states are drawing their districting maps, they cannot use race as any sort of factor unless there's some actual overwhelming evidence that there's intentional race-based discrimination currently, and not just a discriminatory impact or effect on minority groups. So because of this ruling, states are going to be less open to being sued for violating the Voting Rights Act, because the standard for a violation is now extremely high. And so that is obviously encouraging to do partisan gerrymandering, which, for example, cannot be reviewed by the federal courts. So for sure, this opens the door up to a lot of states reconsidering the districting, because there's going to be far less cases that can be found to be a violation of the Voting Rights Act than were previously thought to be the case.
Justice Clarence Thomas voted with the majority in this case, but he also issued a concurring opinion, and I think it's kind of interesting. I want to read part of it here. He says, as I explained more than 30 years ago, I would go further and hold that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act does not regulate districting at all. The relevant text prohibits states from imposing or applying a voting qualification prerequisite to voting, or standard practice or procedure, in a manner that results in a denial or abridgment of the right to vote based on race. How states draw district lines does not fall within any of these three categories. What does he mean by that?
Well, big picture, the idea is that every citizen and every eligible voter in America should be able to have the equal opportunity to vote. And whether that means your preferred candidate is elected is not the point, but that you're not somehow prevented from at least having the opportunity without being diluted intentionally based on things like race, which had occurred in the past. So Justice Thomas's point is that even looking at these factors and trying to differentiate voters based on these sort of criteria is not the point of the law, and it's not the point of the Constitution. So he doesn't think that this should ever have really been a conversation. The majority opinion doesn't go quite as far because they say that it can, in fact, be a violation of the Voting Rights Act when there is evidence of intentional racial discrimination, and then that could satisfy states using race as a basis for districting in particular ways. But the way that the majority frames it makes it a very high standard to show that that has in fact occurred and that there's not other factors that are being used to draw these districts, all of which would not be a violation. And so they wouldn't be opt to be overturned by the court.
All right. I would just point out before we go that Justice Gorsuch was on Fox News Sunday today. A lot of people, especially on the left, are saying that this Supreme Court is essentially a rubber stamp for the Trump administration. He says that is not the case at all. All right. Katie Cherkasky. Katie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.